He has spoken on the topics faith, family and freedom in Cuba, Belgium, Brazil, Congo, UK and all over the USA to crowds from 14 to 40,000. International leadership speaker, trainer and coach. Author of Learn to Raw Leadership, Attitude Hack, Live a More Excellent Life, 5 Battle Strategies of a Victorious Warrior. 2021 President's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Founding partner of the John Maxwell team. Toastmaster International Speech Competition semi-finalist. Founder of Tell It Like It Is TV, ThatGuyRocks.com and ThatGuySpeaks.com. Creator of Story Power TV, Transforming Grace TV, and Leading Leaders Podcast. Producer of 4 TV programs and podcasts for Liftable TV and World Trumpet Television as well as multiple social media channels. Please help me welcome J. Loren Norris.
On many occasions throughout the course of my life, I've looked at who I am and what I've accomplished, and I've said of myself, I am extremely average. In my own viewpoint, I see myself as extremely average. I'm older than many billionaires, younger than many retired folk, not in a position to either be a billionaire or a retired folk anytime soon, still just working my day away. Now, in some places, I'm okay with that. I'm content with that. And in some places, I have to challenge myself and be realistic and say, have I crossed the threshold where contentment becomes complacency? Kind of want to ask you the same question, and that's what we're going to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders. Stay tuned.
Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.
I'm J. Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. And like I said, I've looked at myself and said, yep, extremely average. Nothing really stand out, nothing spectacular, no fancy degrees, no fancy cars, no fancy house, no fancy bank account, no fancy anything. I mean, I've written a few books, but I haven't sold millions of them. I haven't made a best-selling title of any of them yet. And so just extremely average. I have to be honest, though, and say, coming where I came from, I'm at least average or above average for most of the people that I went to school with, graduated around, hung out with when I was a kid. I look at my life and I look at their lives, and if there was a value to comparison, then I could say, well, at least I've done a little better than a few of them. Not better than all of them by any stretch of the imagination. Many of them have gone on to accomplish great things. I've gone on to be extremely average. As a leader, I realize that that's both a curse and a blessing. And here's what I mean by that. As a leader, I realize that not having your head sticking up as the one that gets recognized for standing out, well, you don't get all the darts fired at you. You don't get shot at from every direction. You don't make yourself a target. You know, the old idea that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. There's some truth to that. There's even more truth, though, to the same adage that says the squeaky wheel gets replaced. If you stand out, you're going to get knocked down. And success in life is often like a game of whack-a-mole. The minute your head pops up above the average, you become a target. Look at all the people in Hollywood who have made it big and then been cut off at the knees. Some of them justifiably because they have bad ideas and horrible behavior, and some simply because they stood up for what they believed in. But because they had success, they became a big target. Tim Tebow would be a good example of that. Tim Tebow was someone who worked his backside off to succeed in high school, in college, in the NFL, played in the NFL at the highest level, became an elite level quarterback, a Super Bowl champion, if I'm not mistaken. And yet, because his belief system didn't fit the norm, his success, together with his belief, made him a target. And so his success has become challenged. There were times that great things happened in his life because of his faith, and there were times that his faith and his success together brought disaster. Now, if you look at where Tim Tebow is today, what he's accomplished in this world, what he's done in this world, it's really easy to look at his success after his time on the field. Everybody I know who's played in the NFL, everybody I know personally who's played in the NFL tells you the NFL doesn't stand for just what you think it does. It stands for not for long. Most people don't have Tom Brady type career duration. Most people can't play that long and succeed at that high a level. That's a one-off kind of a person. But somebody like a Tim Tebow who has great success on the field, great accomplishments, earns the lifetime of a living, and then says, at 40, I could sit back and put my feet up and never have to worry about paying my bills again, if life were just about paying bills. But something you'll notice about people who refuse to be average is they're never done. They're never done. They don't quit. They have this tenacity that says, don't count me out yet, even if it looks completely horrible. Even if it looks bad, I'm not done yet. And that attitude flies in the face of the acceptance of being extremely average. And I have to be honest, it challenges me. And I picked up this book the other day, this 10X Rules. The 10X rule, this is not the 12 rules for life for Jordan Peterson. In fact, it's a completely different philosophy. In fact, I'm not sold yet on whether I believe 100%, but here's what I do have to say realistically. Grant Cardone has accomplished things in life that I have not. We're roughly the same age. He's only a few years older than me. But by the time in his life that he was the age I am now, he was worth billions. I am not. He's done something differently than what I've done. He's accomplished what I haven't yet accomplished. And I have to ask the question, what does he know that I don't know? And does it matter that I know what he knows, and should I apply it? So I dive into this book, and here's something that I find, page 61 of the 10X Rules. He says, look around and chances are you'll see a world filled with average. Although this is, as I previously stated, the acceptable level of activity upon which the middle class is built, there is a growing amount of evidence that this thinking is unworkable. Jobs are being shipped overseas and unemployment is becoming an even more rampant. Members of the middle class are unable to get their heads above water. People are living longer than their savings, and entire companies and industries are being wiped out as a result of average products, average management, average workers, average actions, and average thinking. This addiction to average can kill the possibility of making your dreams a reality, considering the following statistics. The average worker reads an average of less than one book a year and works an average of 37.5 hours per week. Here's the contrast. Oh, I turned too many pages. The same person makes, you ready for this? 319 times less money than the top U.S. CEOs, who claim to read more than 60 books a year. Many of these financially successful executives are maligned for the huge sums of money they receive. However, we often fail to appreciate that these people have done what these people have done to get where they are today. Although it might not always look like they are working very hard, we often dismiss the fact that they somehow managed to attend the right schools, make the right connections, did what was necessary to move up the food chain. It all required substantial action on their part. You can resent them if you choose, but that doesn't change the fact that they are being rewarded for the success they achieved. And I have to ask myself honestly, if I were to look back and say, what could I have done differently? What should I have done differently? Then the reality is I have the intelligence, I have the gumption, I have the willingness. I just didn't have the right attitude to be more than average. I have all the potential and all the skill, which is ironic because if you continue on in this book, the very next chapter, he talks about the fact that most people are failing to set the right goals. He calls them 10X goals. He said, I believe the major reason people don't stick to their goals and fail to accomplish them is because they fail to set them high enough from the beginning. He goes on to talk about how the attitude of average and goal setting, how they're tied together. He talks about one of his first jobs, and he said, I was working alongside a guy that had a great attitude. He loved his job. I had a horrible attitude. I hated my job. We had the same job. We both worked at McDonald's making $7 an hour. What's the difference? Now, it's real easy to stop right there and go, well, the difference is the attitude. And I've talked about that. I teach a whole course on attitude. The attitude of excellence that talks about perseverance and sticking to it and making sure that what you do is above and beyond what was expected. That you've actually performed to that highest level of diligence. Having a positive attitude, having a good attitude. There are books by John Maxwell and dozens of others about the positive mental attitude. It goes back 200 years studying positive mental attitude. Emile Coué in 1892 started on that. And the positive mental attitude, it actually has its own vibration, its own frequencies, and it changes things in you and it changes things around you. But let me go back one more step to what Grant Cardone says about the $7 an hour job that he had. He said, the reason I had such a bad attitude about my $7 an hour job was because ultimately it had nothing to do with my ambitions in life. It had nothing to do with where I wanted to be. It had nothing to do with my vision of my own future. It had nothing to do with the goals I had set for myself. So how does this other guy have such a great attitude about a $7 an hour job? His goal was to be a franchise owner. His goal in his early 20s was to own 100 McDonald's stores of his own. Guess what he's doing now? Yeah, he's sitting around with his feet up because he owns 100 of those stores and they're all making bank. Because he started off doing the same thing, an average job in an average place, but with not average goals. He had already established what his direction was going to be, what his vision was going to be, where he was going to go, what he would see in the end, and he got busy doing it. Now, I want to give you an honest grit test of heads up. Sorry, I got to go biblical on you. There's a great meme floating around on Facebook. I shared it myself that says, the anointing didn't take David out of the sheep pen. In fact, it sent him back. When he was called to become the king, they didn't put a crown on his head, put a scepter in his hand, put a robe on his back, and throw him in a throne at 15. Didn't happen like that. Nope. They said, you're the next king. See you in a few decades. And he went from that recognition, from that acknowledgement of the fineness of his future, the power, the authority, the military might, the wisdom that he would wield one day. And he went right back to watching sheep. Why? Because the acknowledgement of your future vision gives you no right to abandon your current process. See, there's this constant tension between what we want to live out and where we live right now. And sometimes the where we live right now, there's a reason for it. It's the process. It has a purpose. It's to knock off the rough edges, to refine the metal that you're made of. M-E-T-T-L-E, look that one up. Not just the M-E-T-A-L, but the M-E-T-T-L-E, the metal that you're made of. What's in you? What does your intestinal fortitude look like? What kind of guts and grit do you have when you're paid $7 an hour and you think, I'm the fry chef supervisor. I will oversee French fries forever. And then they say the ladies' bathroom is clogged and there's stuff all over the floor. And you're going to have to go home and change clothes to come back and finish your shifts because that's nasty work. If you want to own the franchise, you're going to have to do that part too. See, that tension between the average, how long do I stay in the midst of mediocre? It's not about the job you have. It's not about the results you have right now. It's not about where you are right now, the circumstances or the situation. If you judge your life, your success, The finality of what you accomplish when you leave this earth, if you judge that by where you are right now, you will deem yourself a failure. Because it's real easy to look around at whatever your age, at whatever your level of accomplishments, and find someone who's done more in less time, with greater notoriety, who's accomplished things that you haven't even accomplished. But let me ask this real question. Was that your assignment? Was that your goal to begin with? Is that what you were put on earth for? Is that what you're supposed to be doing? If your goal at 17, 18, 20 years old is to own 100 franchises, get busy. Get busy doing what's necessary to become the kind of person who can do that. Apply that attitude of excellence that says, I will always do a little bit more than what's expected of me. By the way, if you go to YouTube, you can search the attitude hack. There's actually an entire online course for that. It's like $200. But I break down every one of the most powerful attitudes that will change your life in the step-by-step of how to change them, the things that you ought to be saying, the phrases that you should be repeating in your daily goal setting. I have this kind of attitude. I live like this. It's all in there. You should apply it. But you've also got to have the diligence of action to say, I'm going to do even what seems like it's irrelevant. I'm going to guard the sheep until it's time not to guard the sheep. I'm going to do the right thing again and again and again and again, even if it seems mundane, meaningless, meticulous. You still got to do it. And you got to do it until it's time not to do it. And you'll know when it's time not to do it. You should go back and read about Vivek Ramaswamy. He's an immigrant, a billionaire now, that figured out where a need was, and he figured out how to meet it, and he did some research and went to some good schools and worked his tail off. He applied excellence and diligence to a set of goals that were stretch goals, big goals, way beyond goals. You might even call them 10x goals. He set some goals that honestly you might look at and go, that's nuts. There's no way. You can't do that. You're an immigrant. You can't do that. You weren't even born here. Run for president. What are you thinking? But he did the right things. He did the hard things, and he kept doing them. You know, Tom Brady still practices. Even after all the Super Bowl wins, after all the big games, after all the stressful relationships, after all the public meddling in his marriage, he still works out. He still practices. He never put his feet up and said, nah, I'm done. Enough is enough. He still stays at the top of his game to the best of his ability. In fact, there are rumors that he may be thinking about coming out of retirement yet again. Who knows? Here's what I do know. When you want to succeed in life, when you want to leave an indelible mark of your contribution as a legacy for the world to look back and go, yeah, they were here. Now, I can tell you there are a whole lot of people that have left this world without the fanfare of the great funeral processions, without the face on the front cover of Time magazine. They've left this world and nobody knew their name. Yeah, Billy Sunday. He might be one of those that you'd be like, who's that? He's a shoe salesman. Yeah. You can follow his lineage back to a bunch of other average people. Average, extremely average people. They didn't do anything spectacular. You wouldn't know them from anywhere, but know a guy by the name of Jim Rohn. Maybe you've heard that name, or the Nightingales. Yeah. There's also a guy by the name of Jim Tolbert. Jim Tolbert's a personal friend of mine. You may not know his name. May not know his name at all. I go to his house every Christmas for homemade chili. It's awesome. But Jim Tolbert was a running buddy with this guy, Jim Rohn. And the three of them together led a Sunday school class in the same church, small church at the time, with a guy whose name you might know, Zig Ziglar. Yeah. Jim Tolbert, Jimmy Rohn, Zig Ziglar, the Nightingale Publishing House. Yeah. All started by a bunch of guys that at the time you might have looked at and went, they're extremely average. They're just doing what they got to do to get by every day. And you don't know until they're gone what kind of lifelong impact they'll make. I've got many of Zig Ziglar's book. There will be a day when people will go, John Maxwell, who? And I'm going to go, yeah, I've been studying that man for 30 years. And others will say he's got great, phenomenal success, so many best-selling books, so much income. I mean, he gets almost $100,000 just to step on a stage and talk for 45 minutes. That's pretty impressive. I'd love to reach that goal. But more than anything else, when I leave, I would like people to look back and go, he invested in me. I'd like to know that their success I contributed to. I made a difference in their life. I'd like to know that I'm making a difference in your life. And while my life may look extremely average and nothing spectacular, if yours is spectacular and you can look back and go, I wouldn't be where I am today if you hadn't challenged me, spoken into my life, made some of those stupid comments on your stupid podcast that nobody watched except the 5 of us. If the 5 of you do something incredible, then I've done what I'm here for. I've accomplished what I set out for. I may live an extremely average life, nothing spectacular. But if I have invested something in you that allows you to stand out, to stand up, to speak loud, to be bold, to be courageous, to set 10x goals that I could never imagine myself, then I've done what I'm here for. I've lived out the goals that were set for me, that were set by me, according to the assignment that I was given when I was put here. And for now, I'll tend the sheep. Until I'm told to do otherwise, I will tend the sheep. Until it's time to do something different, I will tend the sheep. I will live as extremely average if that's what I'm supposed to do. My challenge for you is to know both. The attitude of excellence that demands that you do more. The ability to set those goals that are so big, so large, so giant that you look at them and they kind of terrify you and you think, I don't even know that I'm worthy of accomplishing that goal or capable. But set those goals that stretch your potential. They're not the ones you could wake up tomorrow and go, yeah, done, check it off the list. They're the kind of goals that you set and you go, that's going to take some time. That's going to take some help. I don't have the money. I don't have the resources. I don't have the relationships today to pull that off. But I'm going to. I'm going to. And when you set those kind of goals and you strive to do it, apply that attitude of excellence. Just keep giving. Just keep doing more than is expected of you. Stay with it. Apply diligence and action. Keep doing it. Keep doing the job that's in front of you the best you can, because the next job isn't coming if you're failing at the job you're doing. See, this is my biggest heartbreak with the generation that we see today. It's exhibited clearly in the extremely average who are even okay with being below average. They don't show up to work on time. They call out sick on a regular basis and until they lose their jobs. They complain about how they were treated by their company. They disapprove of anything the company does that looks like success unless it includes them succeeding for no effort. They find every reason in the world to be a victim, as if that by itself is success. They capitalize on victimhood. They feel like that's a career. That's misleading. That's unfortunate. That's below average. But it's become so acceptable that it is average. Corruption, lying, thieving, drug running, sex prostitutes, sex trafficking, selling other people. These things have become the norm in the below average communities. Below average, below their potential, below their ability, below their worth. It's beneath them. It's work that shouldn't be done by anybody. But the ability to accept it because it comes with the financial gain, that's heartbreaking. That's not good for our society. It's not good for culture. It's certainly not good for an individual. And this is not a judgment call on whether you're a good or a bad person. It's what's the contribution you're making to society? Could you do better for more people with the wit and the wisdom that you have? With the skill sets, with the talents, with the natural abilities you've been given? Is this really the best you can do? If the answer is, well, I don't know, maybe it's time to revisit. If the answer is definitely not, then it's time to make a change. You're going to have to apply diligence and excellence. You're going to have to do something different. You're going to have to set some new goals. And if you have a hard time with that, perhaps you need a coach. Yes, I spend most of my time training communicators, but I am also a certified leadership coach, and I'd be delighted to sit down with you and talk about your visions, your goals, your attitude. And let's try to get some of that stuff into a better place. If you're living an extremely average life without contentment, let's talk. I'm J. Lauren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.
Lauren is a master teacher on storytelling, and I learned so much. I'm really going to have to sit down and go back through everything, and I think I might have to have some more coffees with Lauren, but it was totally worth my time, and I really highly recommend it if you're looking to grow your ministry, grow your business, grow your career. Lauren will serve you well.
Thank you.